this, I wasn't trying to be satirical, as I sometimes am. I genuinely thought that if they were telling people to destroy expensive and long-awaited holidays and rush home in the middle of the night and drag their children onto extremely expensive, lately booked flights and do all these things because of an imposed quarantine, I thought that they were serious about it. I thought they must genuinely believe, as I personally do not, that there were some dangers to the country by people holidaying in Spain. Now, so I asked, waiting for nearly a month after the July the 25th Spanish quarantine, I asked how many people had actually been quarantined. I asked what information they had on how many had developed infections, how many had been hospitalized, and if applicable, how many had died. And instead of an answer, I got blethers. I got nothing. First of all, I was told, try Public Health England. This is the day.
Was that shortly before it was destroyed?
Day before it was abolished.
Right.
And Public Health England actually were quite cooperative, and they said, okay, well, we'll try to answer the question if that's what they say. But I continued to press the Department of Health as well. Then Public Health England got in touch with me and said, sorry, we can't answer that. You have to go back to the Department of Health. They then basically sent me a background statement, which was just a statement more or less of policy. It didn't say anything at all about the figures that I asked for. It was as if I hadn't asked them. It was actually verging on the insulting. They didn't say we aren't prepared to divulge these figures, or they didn't say we haven't got them. They just answered a question I hadn't asked. And when I wrote to them and said, surely this is some mistake, no, they said it's not a mistake. And then I said, well, in that case, I obviously have to say what I'm going to say, which is that you appear not to know anything about something which is very serious. And that's what I'm doing. I've obviously put in the Freedom of Information inquiry on this now, and I'll be interested to see how much success that has. Right. A lot of people who aren't in journalism, and by the way, members of the public can do Freedom of Information inquiries.
They can. It's quite difficult, though, to navigate the system, isn't it? Because
it's difficult to do, but what I should say to people is that in many cases it isn't a magic bullet. It doesn't mean that they actually cough up the information you're asking for, and I suspect in this case that will be so, that I will get an answer which is not an answer, right? Or maybe I'll be told it's too expensive to.
Do you think it's because they don't actually? Do you think it's because they don't actually know the answer?
Well, my suspicion has to be that they don't know the answer, but I can't say for certain because I don't know. But surely if they had the answer, they'd tell me.
Yes.
The other possibility is that the answer was that that of the people who got home too late to escape the quarantine, they either haven't made any great effort to survey them, or the answers that have come back from those that have been quarantined is that none of them have actually fallen ill.
Right.
Which undermine their propaganda, which is constantly to keep us in a state of fear about something which, frankly, doesn't justify the measures being taken against
quite.
it.
Well, I mean, I've said this before, and I think I may have even said it to you last week, that, it's one thing when they say we must test everybody, we must be testing people all the time because testing is the answer. And then when you say, well, why don't you test people when they come back from holiday, and that way you can judge whether or not to quarantine them. Oh, no, well, the thing is, testing isn't entirely the answer. And you go, well, you can't have it both ways. Either testing is the answer or it's not the answer. Which is it?
Well, because they can have it both ways, and they do. And what they do is they send battalions of testers into places like Leicester and surge through the suburbs of that city looking for cases, as they call them, of people who are, say, the principal symptom of COVID-19 in Britain today is that you are perfectly healthy.
Yes.
And that statement, which is absolutely true, it seems to me to sum up the whole nature of everything. That these people who are these cases that are being found, and so we're told that Birmingham has to close down, or half the towns in the Pennines have to close down, or whatever. These people who are being found are not ill.
Yes. Well, this is the thing.
They don't. And I believe I haven't been able to confirm. I believe that in hospitals in England the other day there were no deaths from COVID at all. Certainly, the daily deaths, according to the official statistics, are now bumping around the zero mark. August 19th, 16, August the 20th, 6, August the 21st. What have we got? I know August 21st, August 22nd, 18. But it's really tiny, and of course this has been declining since April the 8th. And that is the true figure that they should be publicising, but they don't, and which the media should be publicising. but especially the BBC, which is completely committed to sustaining this panic,
Right.
don't actually cover properly and are astonished when anyone gets through their barricades and comes onto a BBC program and says, actually, it isn't that serious.
Right. Well, it's come to something,
They
Peter,
themselves have fooled themselves into believing that it is a huge 1918 style pandemic, which it simply isn't.
Well, it comes to something, does it not? And I'm not in any way denigrating what you do, but that you as a newspaper columnist and me as a radio presenter are the only people seemingly left that actually ask proper questions anymore. Because I'm looking at a story now, Mail Online, huge COVID outbreak shuts Dundee school. 17 staff and 2 pupils test positive. Surely the question should be, well, how sick are they? Are any of them actually ill?
I mean, it should be, but that just people just don't seem to ever ask this question: how many of these people are ill?
Yeah.
And then we had this whole performance of the medical officers of all the 4 countries of the United Kingdom on Saturday night, putting out this statement saying it was perfectly safe to go back to school. Well, you could make exactly the same statement about any place of work.
Right.
It's the levels of danger. I'm running this campaign at the moment, the tortoise campaign,
right?
Which is I'm telling people that they should be really, really worried about tortoises falling from the sky, because 2,500 years ago, the Greek dramatist and tragedian Aeschylus, sunning himself on holiday in Sicily, was killed when an eagle, mistaking his bald head for a rock, dropped a tortoise on it.
Right.
And it must be about time this happened again, do you not think?
I imagine we must be very careful.
Years, the chances of it are probably statistically much the same of a healthy person dying of COVID in this country. So let's all wear anti-tortoise helmets. And I'm suggesting that eagles should probably be blindfolded if they can be found, so they can't see, and tortoises greased so eagles can't pick them up.
Yes.
And I think we should take serious precautions against this danger, because it's exactly comparable. The danger of having an eagle drop a tortoise on your head in modern Britain is exactly comparable to the danger of actually dying.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, there are many things to be frightened of. I mean, some of them exist, some of them don't exist. You can be frightened. You can have night terrors, and therefore never go to sleep on the basis that you might be frightened by something that you dream
monsters
about
under my bed.
Well, exactly right.
Like everybody else.
But the trouble is, though, that there are so many people. I mean, I've been having an ongoing sort of row over the weekend with people who say how great it is to work from home and how nonsensical it is for them to ever go back to work in an office, because they much prefer working from home, because they get much more done, they get to see their children, and they get to actually not commute anywhere. But unfortunately, we are a sociable bunch of creatures, and actually getting to meet other people is probably a good thing rather than a bad thing.
Well, it's essential in so many jobs
that
you are in actual physical contact with the people you're dealing with, for the germination of ideas, for making sure that people communicate properly, and for so many other things. We didn't all go to work in factories and offices by accident. We did it because it was necessary and important for the economy. I remember there was a time when a lot of people did work from home, and now they don't. And I don't know whether people may be telling themselves that they're working harder when they work from home, which makes one wonder how hard they were working when they were.
Well, I mean, of course, we only got their word for that, haven't we?
That's the point, is it?
No.
And the other thing is, of course, the devastation that this visits on the economy, particularly of London. Which is you may say, well, I don't care about London, and a lot of
that's
people
what they do say.
But the problem with that is that London, whether you like it or not, is a vital part of our economy. And if London dies, then that will affect everybody, because it is such a huge part of our economy. And it will, just as people say, well, what does it matter if landlords are not getting their rent? Well, I say it matters because your pension is almost certainly based on the rent that's paid to those landlords. And if that collapses, then your pension will collapse. And people don't realise how economies join up at the back.
Exactly right. And that is quite depressing to me at the moment. But let me give you a couple of good examples of going back to school. Your kids are probably older now. I've got still 2 kids in the school system. We've had an email from my 13-year-old's school, which says that all years will be sort of isolated amongst themselves. Basically, they won't meet in years, the year above or the year below. They'll go to different lunch groups. They'll go to different break times. And if you are going to drive your children to school, you must not mix with any other people from any other household, despite the fact that people from other households are going to be mixing in the classroom. You know,
Yeah,
it's sort of form of madness.
Some schools are making the children wear face masks or visors. I see in Scotland. Every previously normal experience is being turned into something rather like a visit to a mortuary.
Yeah.
And every human being is being treated like a toxic danger, and the damage that this does to society is huge. But the terrible things that one hears about people with elderly relatives in care homes, and the limited contact they've been allowed to have with them, are actually the word tragic simply does not begin to encompass the totally unnecessary unhappiness and loss of people who were perfectly healthy and happy before this began, forced into this isolation, deprived of human contact, have sunk into terrible physical and mental states because they've been deprived of the company of their families. And this seems to me to be actually actively.
We will make America great again.